Today's show is about lived experience and it's about accountability. I mean, who doesn't need to be held accountable when it comes to people with disabilities across Canada? We all live in legislative poverty, government imposed poverty at provincial or federal levels. This needs to change. And today we're going to be talking about that. So stay tuned. It's all coming up next. Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to PWD Allies podcast. My name is Brent Frain. I'm the host. Today, I have former MP Cheryl Hardcastle joining me from Windsor, Ontario. Hello, Cheryl. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. Happy New Year to everybody joining us and to you too, Brent.
Yeah, the last time you were on the show it was Halloween.
Yes.
Halloween we had you on.
Trick
Time
or treat.
flies. A lot's happened, hasn't it?
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, there's been definitely a complete turnaround, federally, what's going on there, and who knows what's going to happen. Everything's up in the air. Yeah, and provincially, we have a new provincial NDP in BC. So yeah, it's going to be interesting what's going to happen with what's going on with in the U.S., what's going on with tariffs, how it's going to impact BC and every single province across Canada economically. And again, the reason why we need to get the Canada Disability Benefit, going. Like fast tracked a lot faster. And we'll dive into that and many other topics today.
Yes. Yeah, the political landscape now with everybody probably already knows this, so I'm just going to reiterate. Okay, so Parliament's prorogued. It's the Governor General that prorogues. The Governor General prorogued on the advice of the Prime Minister. Justin Trudeau has indicated already, he's been in the news, he's not going to run again. There's a leadership race in the Liberal Party. But a lot of people, when we talk, you mentioned about the governance in the United States and Trump coming back in and the climate, we're really, really influenced a lot by a lot of the pop culture methods that are being used in politics now, and has been gradually for a while, especially with social media taking over for mass media, right? And there's pros and cons to that. Oh, geez. Now we're going to have, of course, the dog's going to start barking into the nitty gritty here.
This is live TV.
Yeah.
But the thing, yeah, we'll all live with it, right? But what is really striking me right now is how a lot of people don't understand the nuances, the differences in our Canadian parliamentary system and the American system, right? They take those social media narratives and apply them American style to Canadian, and that's not how it works here. The leader of the governing party is the prime minister. We don't directly elect a president. We have a prime minister. So we will have a new leader for the Liberal Party. And if that leader is not someone who already sits in the House of Commons, until that time, they'll have a House leader. I don't know if you remember, and just for the benefit of your listeners, when I was a member of Parliament for Windsor-Tecumseh, in the NDP caucus, we had a leadership change from Tom Mulcair to Jagmeet Singh. He didn't have a seat in the House, but he was still the leader of the party. It'll work very much the same way. However this plays out in this Liberal leadership race, they'll have a leader of their party. There will be an election, we know, by the fall. Constitutionally, it has to be held by at least 2026, but we have these dates in the fall, so that's anticipated already. And then that's when there'll be like a total reset, right? Because you'll have an election result.
Well,
Until then, that we still have the Liberal Party is still the governing party.
that's what I
And
want.
the proroguing means that there will be a new throne speech and to get us going at the end of when they come back in March. There will be a new and interim governing structure that won't change because it's still a minority government and the Liberals are the governing party. So until then, we listen to the news, the current events, however we get it, and those influences of social media, which contains misinformation and disinformation, right?
Yeah.
Because it's very politically biased.
I wanted
So
to get.
what kind of opportunity is that for us as
Yeah.
advocates for people living with disabilities? What do we do with all this? It's very relevant to all of our lives. I know a lot of people say they're not political, but no matter if you think you are or not, politics affects you. So where do you stand on certain issues? What is your opinion? What information do you need? That all matters in how you go and find this information, right?
Yeah.
And it can't distract us from disability issues. Like
Yeah.
who's going to be the leader of this party and who's chomping an apple and having an interview on another, like that. It has to come back to what are you going to do to improve our lives? What are you going to do specifically for people with disabilities? What are you going to do about it is what it boils down to. Not what mistakes did past governing parties make, not what past decision makers made, even within your own party historically. What are you going to do, right? This is what
forward.
we need. We need to hear those kind of things, and we need to bring those questions in very pointedly. Not, do you support the Canada Disability Benefit? You can't just say it that it has to be, what are you going to do to improve this?
Yeah, and that's 100% correct, Cheryl. But I was just wondering, like, before we actually dive into the advocacy piece, totally, I think I wanted to get your take on, the whole idea that the government's prorogued now, and a lot of people smarter than me are saying, like, it's not me saying it, it's people a lot smarter than me are saying this, is that Justin Trudeau basically picked the worst option to prorogue government, because you have a lot of bills that are just going to stall out now, and it really kind of inconveniences a lot of things. And also, like we alluded to already, uh, you have the new incoming president in the United States, and it kind of leaves everybody here with their pants down a little bit. And yeah, I just want to get your take on, like, was it really the worst thing that I mean, was there a better option on the table for
Yeah.
Justin Trudeau to do?
Geez.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I'm just being really,
Yeah.
really honest. I don't have any, like, not saying this with any political motivation or anything. I don't know what other choice
Yeah.
he had at that time, with so much pressure to resign, so much pressure, so much media attention on those desires from different individuals to resign. I don't believe that he had any other choice. And yes, now they can seize on that because that's good. That's good political meat. I can tear the flesh off you on this issue now. However, I look at it as that just being the sensationalism of the issue. Okay. Yes, there are valid concerns, and there will be, and there always are. That this is why we have trade agreements. This is why we already have treaties. This is why you already have all of these legislative frameworks in place. Trump is speaking rhetorically that he's going to pull the rug out or do this or that. That's his style. That's a communication style.
Mm-hmm.
How we respond to that is very important, that we're a unified front, but we do have already enmeshed, we do have a legislative framework that we work under with these two countries, okay? And 3 countries, as a matter of fact. Our, what we call NAFTA became NAFTA 2.0. A lot of people called it, but it's the you know, the, what is the proper name of it now? It escapes me. The Canada, US, Mexico
Yeah,
trade
yeah,
agreement.
yeah.
We have NAFTA 2.0.
Yeah.
We have this in place. We have GATT, the treaties that globally there's a legislative framework that everybody uses to engage in trade.
It's almost like the Mexicana or something like that.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
And we have a global, like I said, GATT is the global treaty. If you want to engage, you know, these are the responsible mechanisms that are in place to engage. So will the United States become more isolationist? I live, you guys probably, I think you mentioned this, I'm in Windsor, Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Pull up a map, everybody. Take a look where I'm at the very southern point of Ontario.
Right across the pond.
We have a new bridge that's being built. It's called the Gordie Howe Bridge. A new bridge being built federally between Canada and the US for that trade, for those trucks that come back and forth. You've probably heard and on the news, wherever, I think on CBC, even in the United States, and there's good informative podcasts, there's good videos about how our auto trade works. And right now, when you buy a car in North America, most likely the parts for that car, and I'm saying the big 3, okay, which are now Chrysler's called Stellantis, Ford, and GM, right? You have parts, you have components, they can cross the border to Windsor and that Golden Horseshoe, that industrial area in southern Ontario that goes down into Michigan and Ohio. It's a whole industrial corridor. They cross like those components to get to become a completed car. They've crossed the border 70 times.
Yeah.
0.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They've crunched their numbers. They've invested in their plants on either side. It's very hard to say, oh, they're going to, if they don't like what we're doing, they're going to leave us. Yeah. Right? This is all corporate. You hear that all the time. Oh, they're going to leave their investment. They won't. They won't leave their investment. That's a fear tactic.
Yeah.
But what you have to do is do your job if you're in government. You are the diplomats now. Do your homework, get a good agreement. Just the way we expect our union leaders to get good, responsible contracts with employers that are corporations. Like, we expect everyone, like, pull your weight and do your job. And that's what a government is supposed to do. There is no scenario where you have a government that can just put their slippers on and rest. This is continual. The work is continual for many reasons, whether it's inflation, whether it's new technology, emerging issues of, you know, civil unrest in certain countries that weaken an investment somewhere. Like, it's always moving, it's always evolving. So you always have to have a governing body that is nimble, and responsive. They always have to do their homework. There's no free lunch. We make it look like glamour, like they want it. These are not cushy jobs.
Yeah.
They should not be cushy jobs. And when someone in an opposing party, for whatever reason, when they complain about it without offering a solution, we would do this. That's big red flags to you that you're just listening to rhetoric.
Yeah, Cheryl, when it comes to like the Canada Disability Benefit, like the regulations, like how will that work when a new administration comes in?
Yeah.
I've been hearing a lot of people fearing of, well, it'll just get postponed even further. Yeah.
Well, that was one good thing we celebrated when that became law. That's law now. So the prorogue doesn't affect it.
Okay.
So that administrative work is being done. Okay. To get this going. To get going and keep moving on until I believe it kicks in July of of this year. Right? Well, kicks in. The problem is that these are the like what's a distraction and what's a real issue for us. Okay.
Yeah.
So if this is coming in July 2025, and we know with its vast shortcomings, we're getting this, right? So that's what we need to push as individuals, as groups, advocacy groups. That's what we push. How are you going to improve this? How are you going to address these problems with the Canada Disability Benefit that have been identified? Namely, the amount.
How do you qualify?
Using the narrow definition under the Canada Disability Tax Credit definition instead of the Accessible Canada Act definition. All these different things, right? We still have to advocate for that. Otherwise, you're going to get what has been passed.
Now, Cheryl,
that can become an election issue when there is a federal election. How are you going to fix this? And interestingly, sorry, I know I'm cutting you up, but I want to say this part before we go further. In Ontario, the provincial government under the Doug Ford Conservatives, they're very savvy. They will have their election early. They're going to call their election. People are saying the indications are for March. March of March of this year. He's going to call the election early to secure. They want to secure their bid for power to expand the amount of time that they're in power. That provincial governing party wants to do that before the federal election, because they believe a federal election that brings in, let's say, that does bring in a conservative government federally, that doesn't happen provincially. Then for Ontario, they won't get it. They won't get reelected. So this is their chance to get reelected. Having said that, if you're in a province, okay, you guys already had. How many provinces are coming up with their elections? I know Manitoba's not, because they already had theirs under the Canoe government now. Ours saying Ontario was going to be in 2026. It'll be a year. It'll be early because of the federal scene. And he's setting that narrative up saying, yeah, I need a mandate to address Trump. I need that mandate. So he's using a good rational excuse, right?
Yeah.
But those motivations were there before Trump spouted off, 51st state and all these things that are meant to push our buttons, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Very tactical, very, very tactical. When he throws these things out, it's very, very tactical.
Now, the reason I wanted to interject there, Cheryl, is because we actually have the first one is a comment from Bertie, and the second one is a question. So, if you wouldn't mind, I'll say the comment. I'll say the comment and then the question. So this is a comment from Bertie and a question from Bertie. The comment is the struggles of every Canadian and persons living with disabilities don't magically get a pause button. Well, we are told we are waiting and seeing now, indeed. So that's the comment, and the question is, she says, Cheryl, during the prorogue, are ministers still working on their files to some extent, or what?
Well, they are to air quotes around to some extent, because
Okay.
your deputy ministers are the most senior level of civil service. They are not elected. So you have all of these like non-elected people in the highest, the highest offices that you can attain
Mhm.
in governance, in federal governance. They are still doing their work, and there are people underneath them. They are still doing their work to proceed with the direction that they had, especially if something's already in law, which the Canada Disability Benefit is.
Mhm.
That's why whatever, yeah, maybe there's a pause in the political aspect of governing, but these changes that we need could still be being worked on.
Mhm.
But for example, there's a lot of active bills though that are going to have to be reintroduced now, right? Is that
Yeah,
correct? Yeah.
that's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And everyone's heard that phrase before, probably. The
Mhm.
phrase died on the order paper
Oh, yes. Yes.
is often used to describe what happens to bills at prorogation.
Okay.
The solution means there is an election coming, and there will be a new government next time we come back.
Okay.
That's dissolution. We have a prorogue, which means
Delayed.
we're starting over with the same governing party, no election in between. If there was an election, if this was actually an election period now, if we were getting into that mode, and campaigns and candidates and all that kind of stuff having to be done, and just picture your local, like all those local mobilizations that have to take place for elections, and getting that stuff's not being done because this is just a prorogue. But when it's a dissolution, that means when we come back, there will be a new government, because that new government will be as a result of an election that has taken place.
Right.
Interesting.
Okay.
So we're not in a dissolution, but yeah, that's unfortunately what happens. The phrase died on the order paper means exactly that. It's been prorogued, so that dies on the order paper. Administratively, think about if you're in a senior, if you're in a senior office in these ministries and you've been working on certain things, like, no, you're not going to have a bonfire. You're not shredding papers. You are, now this becomes historical work, something you can build on, something, okay, when it's time for this bill to move forward, when this bill gets reintroduced, is this bill going to get reintroduced? All those decisions that are made, that's what got them to those senior levels of office. They know what has to keep going. What do I put aside here and hit the ground running when a new bill comes? We build on, like, we take this back. So it's not like everything is wasted. There are some things that are, when I think of so much of the work that I just did on a day-to-day basis without having these kind of interruptions, there's a lot of work that you do that, yeah, it can be used by somebody else when you don't come back. If you do the work as an elected person, you direct your resources into work that is very easily taken up by the ministry, so that it's not just political work or fantastical. It has sound, rational information behind it. One of the things I'll use as an example, in my portfolio, I had several things, right? People living with disabilities, and also sports. In sport, I really dug down and tried to find some really meaningful things that I could really clinch on and do research on, so that a future administration could build on it, which was a national strategy about concussion in sport on how, and people living with invisible disabilities, a lot of them have to do with those kinds of issues as well. So I thought it was really good to have a strategy put in place in sport. Did a whole bunch of roundtables and got some expertise and recommendations so that when you're not starting from scratch as an administrator. So let's say you work in the Ministry of Sport and you're someone who is a cleric who's supposed to work and facilitate certain portfolios when they come forward. Oh, what do we do with concussion in sport? This is what we have. So we worked on that. Sexual abuse in sport was another one. First time you get a body together, I'll be a volunteer body, but where are the supports for minor sport organizations that are rec programs? When an accusation comes forward, they're overwhelmed. They can't deal with these. Where's the expertise that they can plug into? So it's the same thing with concussion in sport. How do you tell, where do you get a concussion protocol when you're a backyard rec club? Federally, we have resources for that now. And it's like anything else, it's moving, it's always going. You're never just, okay, we're done. You're done forever. You're never done. Governing is evolved. It's like society. Governing is one aspect of societal living. We live in a society, and governing is a part of it. And I like to really stress that to people, because a lot of people feel like government is separate from them. And that's why they're not political. They don't feel like they're heard. We've got to find ways to, like, how do you bring people back to governing as an extension of you?
Right.
Governing bodies are a reflection of society. And yes, then that brings us into democracy and majority rule and perfect democracy and protecting minorities. That's why you have human rights issues and conventions on human rights. And this is why the United Nations provides those kind of resources too.
Well, this is
I don't know. I think I kind of veered off from.
I just wanted to make a quick comment, Cheryl, and get your feedback on this. Is that, I mean, we have a lot of I would say people that have been around for a while, and also we have a lot of new subscribers, and so they might not know the full history of the podcast. But basically, you've been around for 3 years, just like we have. You were around from the day one, basically, right? So you've been around for 3 years, and one of the things that I always pay attention, and one of the things that I know that you say all the time is the importance of definitions, and that you always stress, like, we have all these definitions already, and so, like, why does government feel the need to sometimes like reinvent these definitions that are already made, right?
Right.
I just wanted to get your feedback on that.
Oh yeah. That's high. That's where people get disenfranchised from government, right? Because they see those political personalities that are holding those offices, and sometimes they make these political choices. It's a political choice to not take the Accessible Canada Act definition and use it. And we had to fight so hard to get that definition to reflect the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons Living with Disabilities has a definition. We're supposed to be signatories to that convention. Why aren't we using it? So now kicking at anything. I will now it does sound like I'm getting political, but I earned that right with some of my inside information. Everything the Liberals did, we had to drag them kicking and screaming. And then they take credit, but drag them kicking and screaming. And you got to work with these people to get them to do it. It's so exhausting, but you do it because that's what you're there for. That's my job, to work with them. That's why I'm not in office now. I get so like my emotions when you talk like, oh, well, the NDP are in bed with the Liberals. Do you realize how hard that work is to work with that governing party to do that? It's not as collegial as you would want it to be, really. In our utopian society, we would want, oh, we're all working together. It's not that. It's very, very difficult. And the work, when you get a minority government that they have to work with you, like, it's a big deal, the stuff that has been accomplished. It does move the needle. It doesn't feel like it because we're still like, I've only got $12 at the end of the month for fresh fruit and vegetables, or, like, we're still screaming and hurting so bad that sometimes those things get lost. But yes, these definitions are there. I've said this before too, Neil. I'm glad you brought it up. Anything that is done right now, like, even let's talk all these shortcomings with the Canada Disability Benefit. The Senate did a report. What year was it? I think it's 2019 now. There's a whole comprehensive Senate report that is very scholarly in its approach, that refers to the expertise, that tells, here's how you can improve the Canada Disability Benefit. It's all there. You don't have to start from scratch with anything. There's so much that's already done to address these issues with the Canada Disability Benefit. We're capable. There's even economic reports. There are economists and groups that have done that scholarly research. I'm saying scholarly because call it scholarly research, call it academic research. What I mean is they've taken that intellectual approach, not a political approach, and they have shown it is more expensive to be a person living with a disability in poverty than an able-bodied person. There are added expenses to living with a disability. It's more expensive to be poor than to be wealthy. We know this, right? We've talked about this even from our own basic lived experience. You've only got X amount of dollars. You can't buy the great big $6 bottle of soap. You have to buy the $3 bottle because you need that other $3 for something else. You can't, and it does. It boils down to dollars and cents. Like, I do live a real life. I'm not a wealthy person that doesn't have to work. And a lot of times you get these people that over time, they gradually have so removed themselves from real lived experience. And they live in these bubbles and they don't know what it's like to stay awake at night because you don't have money to fix your car and you don't have money for a bus pass. And even if you did, your public transit system in your community is shit. Like, all these things that we do talk about as allies, they do all plug into federal issues. And not just that, they plug in provincially and they plug in municipally. And that can overwhelm you. That can be an overwhelming thing when we tell, oh, you got to be an advocate. You're stressing out. I know listen, I know what it's like to be stressed out and all of a sudden you get shingles. Like, people know what their stresses are like, and to be told we have to continue to advocate is very, very exhausting. It's so easy to become fed up and disenfranchised because government's not working. And I will just tell you, if you are somebody who is fortunate enough to have a working computer with a current operating system, and you can go on the internet and you can download these reports or search for them, and they are there. And sometimes all you have to do is put the link in and send it to your elected official, even if it's municipal. Hey, I hear you're working. I hear there's a committee that's working on disability rights. Here's a good report that talks about the pressures of public transit or whatever it is. These reports are there federally. There are all kinds of resources. Even the best practices from other countries have, like, we have all of this. We are living in an internet age. And if you do feel like you're somebody who can advocate, you can do it from your own computer at home if you are fortunate enough to have
Like
those.
we're doing now.
Exactly.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
and you, like, I'll give you one example right now for if you have a federal or municipal election coming up or provincial election coming up, you can go to, let me think if I can, what's the name? It's called Matrix. Go to
Bertie just got the
Matrix.
Senate report, I think, that you're
Oh,
referring to. The
yeah.
from
Oh,
it was from February 21st, 2019. So it's going to be in the live chat for people that are
yeah.
curious.
So
There's a link in the live chat.
yeah. No, I'm so glad you have that. It'll empower you with that information and make you feel glad that someone yes, of
Yeah.
course. But on the other hand, warning, it will make you frustrated because you'll say, what? This is from 2019? What the?
Yeah.
Like, our tax dollars have already gone into a lot of the homework that is required. So that's where that level of frustration does come in. But sometimes you got to take that and just like send it back to them. Or if someone's a candidate, let's say an election is called, you're in this lame duck kind of limbo, you send it to your candidates. If they're an incumbent, even, what are you going to do about this in the next session?
Yeah.
What are you going to do about this if you're next elected? Are you going to address this?
Yeah, rather than pointing fingers saying, well, the other government.
The other guy didn't. He didn't do anything, and I promise I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
You don't want like, what are you going to do? Are you going to push this through? What are you going to do to improve this? Are you going to?
It's like, what are you going to do now? Like, what are you?
Yes.
Well,
and, so that's good that she downloaded that. There's a couple others too that are good, but Matrix takes a scholarly approach. You go to
Matrix is great too. Yeah.
Then there's like a drop down menu. I think it's under strengthening communities.
Yeah.
And there's a toolkit for different, you click on toolkits. There's actually one for improving the Canada Disability Benefit.
Oh,
okay.
So you can see all the stuff that we talk about. You can for yourself, even if you want to have a coffee meeting with people and then say, the three of us have decided we're going to get involved and volunteer for a candidate for the next federal election, or we're going to submit a question at a debate and you want to research to know your questions. Like, those are good things to read together, to have together. Like, I'm telling you, like, I really like that the Matrix toolkit is really good because you can use it municipally and federally and provincially. And
there's
I said municipally, like, you have a committee. Let's say there's a disability advisory committee in your community or whatever, okay? Even if you're not involved with it, or you don't know those people, you don't know when their next meeting is, you can't find it on the website or whatever, you can still email and with a link to a report. Here's something to help you with X issue, whatever it is that you come across.
Yeah.
It's very important, those of you who are listening, it's very important if you're someone who feels like you can muster up the energy a little bit to do those kind of things. I think it's really, really important that we keep doing it.
Matrix has a lot of resources on it. I remember years ago, Cheryl, that Matrix had every single province in there, and there was a link on it and talk about social programs. And for some reason, all of a sudden, poof, it just disappeared.
Yeah, I remember that.
Their mandates and all the breakdowns of cost measures and what the caseloads are and what they projected going forward. And I thought, this is so interesting. And then it just disappeared. I'm going, oh man, because it was.
I wonder if it wasn't. Yeah, I wonder. Yeah. I don't know what the reasoning behind that was. Maybe it was.
Well, what are the
anymore?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, one of the comments I wanted to make, it's all related to this too, is that I worked for the Disability Foundation here for 6 or 7 years, and it was to help other people with disabilities find employment, and it was sponsored by the provincial government here, and so of course you know that a big part of so there was a research component to the whole study, right? And
Yeah.
a big part of it for the provincial government was, of course, like just show us all the success, show us all the success, right? All the wins of this program, and we did that.
Mhm.
But
Wow.
I always took the other side too, and said, well, this is where it's not working. Here's some things that are not working well, and for that I was focusing on the, what do you want to call it, case studies of the individuals that say, for example, I've mentioned before, there was a guy that had smelly carpets,
Mhm.
and he also had somebody who was basically threatening to kill him, like, and he was living in BC housing, right? And
Mhm.
so there's all these things where the government says, well, just find a job, find a
Yeah.
job, and everything's fine, and
Yeah.
they don't take into account the barriers,
The underlying issues.
Exactly.
the living barriers that people face. And I was very careful when I wrote my reports to show all the negatives. But the point I wanted to make is it kind of bugs me that I was putting all this effort in to kind of show the positives and the negatives. And I think at the end of the day, basically the government just wanted to see only the positive. They basically just flushed everything negative. They said, well, don't show us that. We just want to see
Yeah.
the shiny thing, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That's very important um to understand that. It's almost, and it can feel empowering as an individual, I guess, to maybe that's one way to look at it from an empowering aspect.
Mhm.
When you're on a committee or something sanctioned by the government to be an advisory, you have these limitations. You have this silencing, whereas when you're an advocate, you can bring these things up. The problem is now you are considered, oh, you're an enemy, you don't want to work with us, right? So you always have to have um like, I don't know, for want of a better phrase, okay, I think we're all adults here, I don't mean to offend anybody, but you need the shit disturbers
Yep.
to like
Oh,
ruffle it
absolutely.
up.
Yep.
And then you need people to screen that out and say, look, here's what you can do. Like, to do, it's, you have to do that homework, right?
Yeah.
And it does matter. And at least for you to say, yeah, I went on the record, we brought it on the record. That's why I love committees when they invite testimony,
Mhm.
and the
Lived experience.
testimony is very realistic. That stays on the record, even though they filter it out. I when okay, is that too loud?
No, it's fine.
Guys,
No, it's
It's
actually
fine.
good.
Yeah.
I don't have the little. I have the one dog. I have her little beeper on. I just vibrated to get her to be quiet. Sometimes. Sorry. Okay, but
No, we
so
we
I
can't
work.
hear it.
So when I was
Live
the critic
entertainment.
for people living with disabilities, it was um, liberal government,
Mhm.
and the minister of the day was like really sifted through like only the good stuff and just ignored la 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 la. Didn't
Yeah.
hear any of our stuff.
Only want to hear
Oh,
what you want to put out.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So I made sure as much as I could to get things in the mid, like on the record, right? You try as hard as
Yeah.
you can to get things on the record.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you can't be belligerent. You can't, like we can talk a little bit more candidly here, but you do. You have to like meditate or do your calming. You've got to do it within a certain parameter because you want these things to get on the record.
Mhm.
And yes, you can still have your frustration, but you almost need like two groups that are like, very well, and you can be part of both, I guess, depending on how public you are, because they'll go, oh my God, here comes Brent.
Yeah.
Like,
I
You
always
don't,
feel,
oh no,
yeah.
Brent's friendly, like
Yeah.
you wanna,
Yeah.
but Neil, watch out for Neil. But meanwhile, Neil's feeding stuff to Brent, right?
Yeah.
Like you gotta empower. That's
Yeah.
why this,
Yeah.
talking about being there from the beginning. Like you
Yeah.
have to find these out, you've got to find allies and work with these allies. And some of your allies are doing boring academic work.
Yeah.
Some of
And,
your allies are, sharpening their sword.
yeah.
Some
Yeah.
of your allies are creating stir on social media. So like
Yeah.
Mhm.
there's no one way that works either. Otherwise it would have been done by now, right?
And I don't mean to pat myself on the back at all.
Yeah. Oh,
But what I was going to say is I've always felt that I was pretty good at wearing two hats because I mean, I've been victimized by bad policy. I mean, you know,
exactly.
if we could
Yeah,
talk about my clawback, my PWD clawback for the last 12 years. So I've been victimized by bad policy, but at the same time, while I was working for the Disability Foundation, I could put on the good guy hat and really cheerlead this thing is like rah rah rah, it's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
easily switch hats, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. Like you can be victimized by bad policy, but you can also like cheerlead the good
Oh,
things too.
absolutely.
And I would always try to do that. I'm
Yeah.
always trying to see the good and the bad, right?
Yeah.
And wear
Oh,
those
yeah.
two
We can
hats.
build on this. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and
Um,
that's why I try to, like, for me, like I'm there as like as a sounding board. People come and they talk about lived experience, but then at the same time, I put on the other hat saying like government needs to be held accountable. They need to do better. They need to do this.
exactly.
And
And,
actually, with that being said, Cheryl,
yeah.
maybe Neil, you want to give that announcement of a graphic thing that with Jeff that you've been working with.
Oh, no more legislated poverty.
Yeah, there's
What?
a yeah. We're going to be
Yeah.
going to Ottawa, Cheryl, on
Oh,
February
nice.
4th to the 6th.
Hmm.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, we're going to be setting up a media there, getting media to join with us and getting our voices heard about ending legislative poverty for disabled Canadians across Canada.
Maybe you can
Yeah. And
go have lunch with Cheryl.
it's, well, I'm in Windsor. I wish it was in Ottawa, but
As long as there's not a snowstorm there. I mean,
yeah. Yeah. We just finally got some snow. We haven't had, we didn't have, yeah. I know some places have had snow since like
we haven't had any snow
last
here.
time we talked, but we just got our snow. Maybe we had like a little dusting that didn't last, and yeah, just like after Christmas. So
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. We're going to be heading out there and just making sure our voices are heard, even though the Parliament's probed.
and
Yeah, it's going to be good.
that's great to hear. And just going back to what Neil was saying about, he has his own lived experience with having clawbacks and a situation, I think, with a survivor's pension.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so here we are on one hand talking about how weak, how inadequate the Canada Disability Benefit is actually going to be. But the irony is, if these other policy changes were made, it wouldn't be.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
And oh, well, that's not up to us. That's provincial. Well, you can use that federally too as a bargaining tool. Look it. You're not allowed to claw this back. And I don't know how else to say it. You can call it something else so that that's not clawed back. But what are some other tactics or other ways that they have? They can say, like, if you fix this policy, we'll do this.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping
because that so many people that have a story about their situation, their case study actually about being clawed back. If they didn't have that problem, this benefit would actually bring them above or to the poverty line.
Yeah. Well, you're
talking about 75%. Some people, like, isn't it? How many are who live in poverty are deep poverty.
1.6, so I was 1.5, it's about 1.6 million now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
actually,
So,
over time.
yeah.
But you're
So
right, Cheryl. If the federal government could use that as a bargaining chip and say, you know,
Agreed.
we're not going to give out this Canada Disability benefit until the provinces
Stop all that.
get in
Problem
line
is,
and stop
you're-
other clawbacks.
Yeah. I don't think that would work.
Well, maybe
They have
not,
to
but
find, I think, because all it does is punish you.
yeah,
Okay, fine, we won't do it then. Depending
that's
on
true.
the kind of government you have to figure like something else has to be in play. Oh, if you do this, we'll make sure that I'm being so hypothetical right now.
Yeah.
I don't want to get in trouble politically, but what if that, will increase the amount that you get for like apprenticeship programs or whatever it is. You've got to tie something else to this.
Mm-hmm.
Problem is people living with disabilities is not sexy.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not politically fizzy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you said about like only tell us the wins.
Yeah.
How it works with our first past
Yeah.
the post system. That goes back to electoral reform. I'm telling you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm hearing on social media and just around my neighborhood too. A lot of people are saying, well, then like why is the CD or the CDB the way it is at up to $200? And like, of course, there's always that narrative saying, well, why didn't the current government working with the other one make them do that and push it forward? And it's that narrative, right?
I know.
It's like saying like, oh, the federal NDP, why didn't they force the Liberals to actually make the CDB happen now?
Yeah.
And there's, we had Benita on talking about that, exactly it, and there was a lot more in that bill that if they didn't do it, that whole bill would have kapoosh.
Yeah. And she gets a lot of slings and arrows at her, right?
And it was a tough question. I threw it at her and I said, don't take this personally, but why didn't you do it? But she explained it. And again,
Now that brings us to another part of all this, right?
Yeah.
That's a good story. Why didn't any media pick that up?
Yeah, exactly.
It's not clickbaity enough. It's not. No, what is it about these issues? Like they fall flat when it comes to the limited media that we have left, or the limited responsible journalism. There's very little left, even now. Like I love to look at actual news articles. How many times do you get like 3 or 4 journalistic facts thrown into an opinion piece? I don't want an opinion piece.
Yeah.
I want just an article about the facts, please.
Well, that's one of the questions I had to one of the media. Like I had a media interview not that long ago, and I actually had mentioned that to a reporter. They left that part out of the report. I had said about the agreement with his federal NDP with the Liberal Party about the CDB, and it was just like oh no, this is no, I don't want to hear this, and they didn't put that there, and it was just like crickets,
Yeah.
I was like, wow, like I said, this is about lived experience. Like it should have been all splashed over the media.
I've said that for a long time, and even like in my just being totally gratuitous right now, some of the work that even in my local paper, yes, it's owned by Post Media, and they have their corporate agenda. Like, why are you not writing about this?
Yeah, well, it's
locally, whether it's like independent journalists need to write about things that keep it viable for them.
Well,
again, I don't know. I was a journalist and a community newspaper reporter and editor for 20 years. I think you guys knew that in my previous life.
Yeah.
And the way it's not even recognizable to me anymore.
It's changed so much.
Like how it's changed so much from how I did things.
Yeah.
Well, I'll even reference and I mean, and to our listeners, our viewers, I mean, nothing against any political party. I just want to make sure everybody understands this, that
Yeah.
in like BC, we recently had our election, and so we got a slim majority NDP government. They didn't need the Green Party, unfortunately, but the Green Party ran on their platform of for people on provincial and disability and assistance. So of course it used to be a pension, but anyway, that's
Yeah.
a whole thing. So the Green Party ran on it, saying that they were going to bring the rates to $2,400. But the media never ran with it, and that's like so infuriating. Like saying, well, why didn't you say, hey, you ran with this $2,400? Now the NDP is saying, well, we're going to wait on the CDB federally. Yeah. And so now it's basically they've kind of now watered it down. The Green Party watered it down, saying, well, if it's fiscally maybe economically doable, then maybe we'll look at something, but they're not committing to no dollar amount. So again, it's that narrative of, and I think the people in the disability community feel like, okay, well, who am I talking to here?
I know.
And then
just going back, there are reports, there is work, there is academic work done that shows you could take money from somewhere for a program and it would be more effective to give it to those individuals. Like started farther at the bottom.
Yep.
The individuals and you'll get more bang for your buck.
Yeah.
So
they like a building.
That. I have a very cynical view about, especially federally, and how that influences the culture, like the political culture, the decision-making culture, no matter what party in every province. Because federally, we've only had 2 corporate parties.
Yeah.
They take turns.
Yeah.
Over time, maybe at one time they were not, but they're both, different ways of the same machine. They're both corporate parties and they've been taking turn governing for what, 150 something years now.
Yeah, that has to change.
So yeah, and I think the problem with that is, and that goes back to like electoral reform and everything else. Yep. Aside from that, it goes back to this other idea of these machines and this influence, how they're perceived in each province, how like, oh, we're going to wait and see what they do, because everybody wants to
pass the buck,
stay in power.
Yeah.
What's the narrative we can use to keep everything copacetic for us?
Right.
Instead of saying we're going to follow, we're going to follow the evidence.
Yeah.
We're going to do this. We can find the money to do this when our approach was we've got to do all these other social programs.
Yeah, it's like, what are we going to do? Yeah.
If you eliminated the money that you gave to, well, I shouldn't say eliminate. If you found money to give to individuals by eliminating a certain type of clawback, let's say, provincially.
Right.
If you found the money to do that you would find the money to do that, because now your pressure on social housing, you have people who now can make market rent,
100%,
live closer to a bus stop, or afford something that makes them a reliable employee now. To be able to go to work for 10 hours. And that's not clawed back, then I can use that money to do that. Like,
yeah, you
can now. It's not domino effect, but yeah, it has a ripple effect, right? It ripples into these other things. You don't have to, that's why we don't have that in our budget to do this. You do have it in your budget to do this. You just don't see it because of the lens you're using.
Yeah, it's not prioritized. It's making the decision making on how it's going to better people's lives. So it's like saying, well, if we allocate this to this person, how is it going to better their life in so many ways?
Yeah.
And exactly like it's like a domino effect. It's because it's like, oh, well, I need a jug of milk, but hang on, I need a bag of carrots. Well, maybe I'll have to get a 1 liter of milk so I can get those carrots.
Yeah.
Than saying this is going to last me longer. Well, why not
Exactly.
give the money that way?
Yeah, and I know I get charged with being an idealist a lot of the time, and I'm okay with that actually. But the thing
Yeah,
is
me too.
the thing is that I'm always like, why not try to do the right thing most of the time? Like, it seems to me like when you have bad policy, like the clawback, for example, we know that that's a bad policy. I mean, that's doing the wrong thing on purpose, right?
Exactly.
It's doing the wrong thing on purpose, and I'm always like, as the idealist, like let's try to do the right thing most of the time.
That's why it's very good to insert that word legislated poverty.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And, and we talk about housing. Recently, there was something on our local news in our housing, BC housing, an elderly woman who's been living in her car and she was offered housing, but it was not the type of housing that she said that it would be adequate for her life, and she just could not live in that deplorable housing, she said. And because of it, of course, now we got one of the ministers now is now going to get involved with that story, because it's now the media is now growing legs in the media saying, hey, what's going on here? I'll give you an example, Cheryl. I rent from a corporate landlord. And they're really nice managers. Like I'm not going to diss them because they're really nice people. But the narrative behind it is, they're investors. I mean, they got to keep their investors happy. They even admitted to me, we got to keep our investors happy. They're expecting a rate of return. There was a place that we wanted to rent, but it was without out of our financial means, for Sonia and myself. So we couldn't go and rent there. I mean, it would put us in a very bad situation where, you got a roof over your head. You can maybe buy some food, pay some bills, but now you're in a spot where you really can't do too much. Now that same place, because we haven't rented it, it's now going for $1,900. So even if we want to, like now it's like, what happened there? And it's been vacant since November.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
I know. It's so frustrating.
Isn't it? Yeah. And
I see that too. And that's the problem when, and our, we have past governments to blame for eroding or reducing, like cooperative housing.
Yeah.
Not everything, not like when you say housing is a human right, why we say that? Not everything is meant to fit into this capitalist formula where you have to make profit. Okay, maybe you can make X amount of profit. The interesting thing is the way it works right now, even with stock markets and investing and all, and those rules could change too. I know I've talked to you about these things before. Yeah. So you could say, and I'm just going to use off the top of my head for the sake of demonstrating my point. Okay. I haven't researched it lately. I don't know what the numbers would be lately, but you could say you can make 6% profit on housing.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah.
In perpetuity. And when you sell it, that market value, like, no, you can only have a 6% profit. But the way they do it is it grows.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just a profit, but every quarter you report, and I'm talking about investors now, in a whole bunch of things, not just housing, but it's including housing now. I mean, you have all kinds of numbered companies that just own.
Oh, yeah.
So and it has to go up every quarter. So I made 6%, now 8%, and it has to keep growing every quarter, or it's reported as a negative, a profit loss. And we see that. No, you're still making a profit.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just that you didn't make more money than last time you reported.
Yeah.
You're still making a shitload of money.
Yeah.
That's what's frustrating to me. So then that's reported as a negative or a loss, a headline. Oh, the Bank of Canada and the posted this, and then these reported losses. They're not. Oh my God.
Well,
Just
here's
the way it's manipulated. You're still making. It's like that's why I talk about access before excess.
Yeah. Well,
And when you talk like that, even though it makes sense for certain things and it can coexist with capitalism in a democracy, you can have regulations coexist, but oh no, now you're a scary communist.
Yeah. Well,
and it shuts the conversation down. And no, that is actually not.
Yeah.
Social housing is a responsibility for human rights. Are we not invested in individual human beings so that they don't suffer?
Well,
but it's okay for a corporation to pay executive millions of dollars and like excess space, excess, like it's okay to allow excess.
Right.
And I'm just remembering that one meme, the yacht for my yacht. Okay. To me, that speaks to excess. I'm not saying someone who worked hard and innovated doesn't deserve reward. We all get that. We all get that.
Well, here's a scenario.
People don't have access to basic needs because you're allowing excess to come before access. Access before excess.
Like I said to our corporate landlord, well, what if we pay what we pay for rent there? It's been vacant for X amount of months. Oh no, the landlord, the owner won't go for that. I go, so it's going to stay vacant. They're not going to rent it, and now you can jack it up to that much money. Good luck trying to rent it. And they're like, well, it's all part of doing business. I'm like, and wow. And then I argue with the housing provider in BC, and where I say, well, what if you have a roommate, or what if you have a friend of yours who wants to move in, split the cost of housing because they can't afford the high market rent? No, you got to be homeless, or you got to be fleeing back, or your place is being condemned or sold. And I said, well, the policy is messed up. And they're like, well, that's how the policy is written in regulations. And I go, well, the regulations need to change. Well, unfortunately, that's you have to be in a common law relationship or married. Then you can move to BC housing. I'm like, say what?
I know. If you get down into it, there are so many of these things that are regulations.
Oh, I know.
That could just be done without
a stroke of a pen. Boom, done.
Yeah. And that are life-changing things.
Oh yeah.
But it's not that they don't, I don't know, they don't appreciate the depth of importance of that, I guess. They just
live in a bubble.
We do it for you. Oh, we'll open a can of worms and we have to do it for everybody. Have you heard those kind of sayings before too?
Oh, I have.
Oh my God.
Actually, the housing provider, BC Housing, said that to me on the phone. If we change it just for you or your neighbors, we have to change the whole system. I go, and would that be a bad thing?
Exactly.
It would be actually a good thing, because I said my motto is I like to see people housed, not unhoused.
Yeah.
and
the devil they know, right?
It's like you said earlier, though, Cheryl, is if you raise the rates or you eliminate the clawback policy, you're pumping more money into the economy, directly, and that's a good thing. But for some reason, the government still don't see it that way. Like, well, if we give people more money, they're just going to spend it. Well, of course,
that's what you want.
That's what you want. But for some reason, they're like, well, don't do that.
I worked on before I was elected. I worked on a national pension reform committee that was just dealing with seniors and old age security and talking about economic stimulus. That's a no-brainer. You have small communities that are hurting. You have small towns. Seniors live everywhere. If you increase these things, and like I said, you have evidence they did this here. This is what happened. That's why, and why are we do a pilot for 18 months and monitor what's happening.
Yeah.
And you'll see the successes and be able to actually get behind it and take credit for it and feel like it is a win. Like you can do that. Start it off with your wording if you have to, and then make it permanent.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, call it like the Economic Opportunity Fund or something like
yeah,
that.
like exactly. But there's that political courage.
Yeah. Yeah. That,
Is,
the ambition to really get it done, saying, oh,
yeah,
if I,
yeah,
it's like trying to put that DERB in there. Oh, no, we can't do it because if we put that in there, then the CDB is gonna go through. It's like excuses of not to make things better for people's lives.
We've blown past the hour.
Yes, we have.
So I don't know if you wanted to wrap up now, Brent.
Sure. We'll have you on again very soon, Cheryl, and we'll do a little catch up on where we left off. Well, first of all, Cheryl, I'll pass it to you first. I guess your ending statements, and I'll be closing out.
Well, thanks for having me back, you guys, and thanks
absolutely
for the discussion. It's energizing.
Yes, it is.
And we do need that, even if it just helps with your own self-talk and how you're going to get through the next week. And hopefully it does help you say, okay, I'm going to start looking at how I can be a voice in my community and how I can be a voice for people living with disabilities. Because you have a lot of family members that are, when we talk about everybody hurting, you have a lot of family and friends who are frustrated that they cannot help more because they're just treading water, right? You've got a lot of people that do want to be allies. We have to figure out how to put that on those government opportunities. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so important to come together as a community and hold the political
absolutely
federal provincial, doesn't matter who they are, hold them accountable. I mean, they're in office. That's like, what are you going to do for me? Like, how are you going to change my life for the better?
Yeah.
Rather than pointing fingers at, well, they were in government and that's what they did, and this is okay. Well, what are you going to do now? Like, what are you going to do to make it better?
Exactly.
And that's one thing I've learned over years is, stay focused on the now. I was taught that actually from one member of Legislative Assembly. Is like saying, Brent, don't do the blame game of well, this one here and this one here. How do we work forward and work together? Or like,
one thing I would like maybe for the next time when I come on, like I would like to maybe talk about or highlight some reports or best practices in other places, or actual examples. Some of these, like, here's what you can do. This works. And they're like some of that work that's already been done. We talked about some of those. That'd
be a great show.
I think
some of those reports. Awesome. Like maybe some of your listeners will have a few that we can link up as well. But it's very frustrating. But it's also almost a relief to find, like, oh my God, this has been done.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not crazy to think, I'm not just being an idealist. This. I'm not just being.
Well, what's the thing is, it's like the studies that are out there, and then they just keep pounding away. Oh, well, this
doing
is
what they do. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I know. And it's just staying focused and putting all the ideas forward and generating them out to the political parties and saying, hey, like, enough, like this, let's get this done. Let's get it past the sand line here, and because they can push forward, right? Or the goal line, or having provincial saying, well, we're waiting on the feds to do it. Well, no, like what are you going to do now? Like, don't worry about the feds. I mean, right now, if it comes to fruition, which it will,
you have a responsibility here.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, exactly.
Pass the football or hot potato, I call it.
Oh, yeah, that's hot potato politics for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your patience with the dogs.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Extra entertainment. Yeah.
Okay, guys.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Cheryl, for coming.
Take care, everybody.
Yeah. I want to thank our listeners for tuning in today, and please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. And there's the podcast version. Check it out where it's available to you. And yes, click like, subscribe, and share as always.
And buy us a coffee if you're able.
There
Yeah.
you go. Yeah. Good. Stay tuned for our next podcast, and Cheryl, we'll have you on again very soon. Thank you,
Okay,
everyone.
take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.